opinion, the most relevant thing that you will learn in all of debate is the Toulmin model of argument, the Toulmin model, because it is basically the best, in my opinion, form of just argument writing that you'll use for the rest of your academic career, certainly, and most likely the rest of your life. And Stephen Toulmin just wanted to take philosophical sort of logic problems that frame arguments and create like a real applicable, just like this is the way to write arguments form. And this is the model that we have today. And so his model starts with a claim. And a claim is like your thesis statement in a paper, or it's just like the point that you want to make, or like your main idea, or it's just something that you want to prove. And in order to prove that claim, you need to have evidence to support that claim. And so he called this grounds, but really grounds is just sort of like, it could be data, it could be logic, it could be observational analysis, it could be, some kind of evidence or support that you're going to use to make your claim. So, for example, if you were to make the claim the sky is blue, you might say, I've observed that, and use that observational data for your evidence. So a warrant is the third part of this, and a warrant is essentially reasoned analysis that connects your evidence to your claim. And so some claims and the evidence that you supports them is like very self-evident, so it doesn't require much of a warrant. For this, I always think about global warming. If I was making the claim, global warming is occurring, I might use as evidence for that temperature data and cite, just say, the last 15 or 20 years of temperature data and say we can see that temperatures have went up every year, so that proves global warming is occurring. And in that case, the evidence speaks pretty clearly for the claim. But maybe a different kind of evidence that I would use to support that claim is I could look at data about sea levels around the world. And that data might show that sea levels have also risen over the last period of time. So I might cite as evidence for my claim global warming is occurring that sea levels are rising. The reason that evidence might support that claim, though, is unclear. So you need to add a clear warrant to that, which says, sea level rising happens because ice caps melt, and when the ice caps melt, it causes the sea levels in the ocean to rise. And ice caps melt because, again, the planet is getting hotter. So we can see that as evidence that the planet is getting hotter. In that case, you're just explaining why the evidence that you have used to prove your argument indeed proves your argument. And this is where a lot of people, just as a teacher looking at people's papers, but also in debate as a coach, people make a lot of mistakes here because they might have good evidence for the point that they're trying to make, but they oftentimes just forget or don't explain why that evidence is good evidence. So the next one is called backing. And really just backing is additional evidence or pieces of support for either the warrant or for your evidence to make your claim. So, in the case of global warming, maybe your initial evidence was temperature data, and then your additional evidence or backing for that argument was also the data about sea level rises, and maybe, you have some other ones too, about the spread of disease or the rainfall, or I don't know, just any other thing could be backing. And additionally, for my thing, that when I pointed out the connection between sea level rises and global warming just a minute ago, you might have some evidence that explains that scientific connection. So that provides additional backing or support for that warrant that you're making. The next one is a qualifier. And so a qualifier just helps you sort of say how much you believe that evidence really proves something your claim is true. So in the case of temperature data, you could say strongly proves that global warming is happening. So it's just sort of adding a level of this is how much I believe this, or how likely this claim I really feel about. So almost all, nearly all, some, etc. And then the last one is a rebuttal, and really, this is something that I've seen people make mistakes for, but all a rebuttal is thinking about all the possible arguments that someone could make to your position, and then thinking ahead of time about how you'd respond to them. I think about it like chess. Like debate is a lot like chess. So, a bad, or not bad, but a new chess player might just think about like the next move. But like good chess players think about like their move and then what their opponent will do and how they'll respond to that, and they might think 6 or 7 moves ahead down the line. This kind of argument thinking is the same thing. So it's saying, when you present your argument, you should think about what are possible counter arguments someone might make to my position. So in our position about global warming, what are counter arguments someone would make to evidence that says global warming is occurring, or that sea level rise is associated with global warming, or whatever. And then think about how you might respond to those warrants, or at least be prepared to respond to them in the case of something like a debate where someone's going to be prepared to refute what you're saying. Now, this model of argument is excellent. I think it will help you. Like if you just use this as like a checklist when you're writing a paper, you would get A's in literally any class that you would take. But for debate, we kind of have 2 extra elements to it that I like to add. And so remember, in a debate, a judge is comparing your argument to your opponent's argument. So you need to add a little bit to sort of explain why your argument is better. So the first one is sort of like, why should the judge prefer your argument to your opponent's? So, you could talk about the quality of your evidence, you could talk about the strength of your claim, the amount of backing or the support for it, or the logical connection, or just, I don't really care what it is, but why should the judge believe the claim and evidence that you have presented for your side over your opponent's? And then the next one is sort of like, why does it matter? So you've spent all this time presenting this claim about evidence, we've proved that global warming is happening. Why does that matter for the judge? Like, why does it matter in the context of a debate? Why does it matter in the context of your paper? This is the like, so what question that you also need in most of your essays. So, you spent time making this argument and giving some evidence for it. Now, what do you want the reader, or in this case the judge, to do with that argument? Why does that matter? Why should they be compelled by that? You need to say that to tell the judge, okay, I've made this argument, here's why it's important, and here's why I should win the debate for it. So to kind of summarize, all of debate is just about making arguments. And we try to use, I like formulas because they help us get things down, and we can do them the same every time. But really, all of debate is just about who can make a more compelling argument. And this is like all the recipe for a compelling argument. So you need a strong claim, you need evidence that supports that claim, and you need to be prepared to explain why that evidence supports the claim. And you might want to research multiple reasons to support that same claim. And you need to think about the process of like, what could my opponent say to this argument? And then prepare to rebut that or respond to it. And then think about how that debate might play out over the course of, several speeches across the debate. And as always, you want to be able to explain to the judge at every point in time, why should you prefer my evidence and arguments? And why do my arguments matter? Like, why is the words that I'm saying now relevant to you, and why should it compel you to vote for me? And if you do all those things, that'll make you not only successful in debate, but pretty much make you successful in any argumentative situation that you find yourself from now for the rest of your life.